It ruled Malaysia uninterruptedly since the country's independence from Britain in August 1957. But Barisan Nasional's 61-year grip on power came to an end in May 2018.
I think there were many factors, but it culminated in the largest corruption scandal in the world. Only one NEB kept it all.
Less than 2 years later, Barisan Nasional found itself back in the government, this time as part of the new governing coalition known as Perikatan Nasional. But trouble has been brewing between two key component parties of the ruling coalition, UMNO and Bersatu.
Bersatu was established is to mirror UMNO and to replace UMNO. They still backstab us by having such a coalition, trying to replace. In the beginning, they tried to pinch our members.
I think UMNO wants to take it back, regardless whether they can win or lose. I think number one, they need to regain their stature as the number one party in Malaysia.
But can UMNO and Barisan Nasional return to dominance once again? Can they really afford to go it alone and win big at the next general election?
Kita perlu bangkit semula.
It's the month of Ramadan. Life has slowed to a crawl. Ramadan is the time when Muslims abstain from food and drinks from dawn to dusk. It's also a time of spiritual reflection, charity, and self-discipline. Politics often takes a back seat during this period. All the tensions and political mudslinging seem to have disappeared. But politics has become part and parcel of the Malaysian life, and it's not going to be lost from the psyche of its people. 36-year-old Nur Azlin Ambros is a grassroots leader from Johor. He's a member of Malaysia's Grand Old Party, UMNO, since he was a student in the United Kingdom. It was there that the mechanical engineering graduate met his prospective boss, former UMNO Johor Chief Minister Muhammad Khalid Nordin. Nur Azlin then served as his special officer.
I find it very fulfilling to serve the community. Party is a platform for me to serve my community, and what most important is the ideology that everybody, those who involved in politics, hold to. So basically, UMNO's ideology based on nation building and nation building and nationalists is something that I basically subscribe.
The history of the United Malays National Organization, or UMNO, stretches back 75 years ago in May 1946. The party was formed as a response to the post-war British Malaya's proposal to form the Malayan Union. Under the proposal, all non-Malays would be offered citizenship rights. Sovereignty of the Malay rulers would also be transferred to the British Crown. The Malays saw the proposal as a threat to the Malay sovereignty over Malaya. The protests that followed then forced the Malayan Union proposal to be scrapped. It was replaced with the Federation of Malaya on February 1st, 1948. The new federation came with increased safeguards for the special position of the Malays. The position of the Malay rulers was restored. Political parties that were formed to contest the 1952 municipal elections also decided to organize themselves along racial lines. UMNO and the Malaysian Chinese Association, or MCA, banded together and scored the most convincing victory since elections were introduced. Together, they won 26 out of the 34 seats contested.
And I think a lot of our leaders were posed with the questions before independence, whether or not we could live together, because we have a mixed population of people from various ethnic origins, Malay, Chinese, Indians. And at that point of time, I think the composition of the population was more about the same between Malays and non-Malays, because not only we comprise of people from different ethnic origins, but also diverse cultural background, diverse religious beliefs, and I think also because we have a mixed bags of people, even of the Malay race, of the Chinese community, because of the various tribal affiliations. And we got a good start, and the result of the election was very good. We won practically every seat that we fielded our candidates.
The Alliance Party, which was made up of UMNO, MCA and Malaysian Indian Congress or MIC, continued to make progress in the post-independence Malaysia. It emerged as the dominant party in the 1959 election, winning 74 out of the 104 seats contested. And that also formed the basis for the creation of Barisan Nasional, which expanded its membership to 9 political parties. Still, ethnic politics became the cornerstone of its struggle.
You know, this Barisan Nasional formula has been with us for so long, and it's part of the national furniture in the sense that so many people have grown up with the idea that you have race-based parties working together in a coalition, and that in most cases the Malay party tends to be the dominant partner.
Even though UMNO was the dominant party among all the other partners, but the imbalance, you see, was kind of moderated, so that, you see, each party actually had a role to play. So I think that is still a formula, even for today, that any political party needs to have that sort of minimal kind of collectivity, a multicultural, consociational, with a little bit of imbalance, you see, towards Malay dominance.
From the very beginning, UMNO became the dominant party within the coalition. If anything, threats to the leadership did not emanate from outside the party, but from within. During the 1987 party election, UMNO faced its biggest internal crisis. Then Prime Minister and Party President Dr. Mahathir was challenged by a popular former Cabinet Minister, Tengku Razali Hamzah, for the leadership of the party.
So when I was challenged, I did not stop the challenge. I allowed the challenge to go on, and Tengku Razali made a bid to become the president of the party. And because he was quite popular, to the point where I almost lost the election. I won only with 42 votes, very, very small. But nevertheless, in democracy, even if you win with one vote, you are still the winner. So I continued to be the president of UMNO.
When I lost to Dr. Mahathir in the challenge for the presidency of UMNO, which was a premiership position of the country. So somebody who was not satisfied with the way the election was conducted took the matters to court. And in the proceeding, it was decided that the actions by these people who came from unregistered branches of UMNO were considered unlawful. And because UMNO was declared unlawful, people like me, plus my colleagues, who were members of parliament, were left standing without a party.
Dr. Mahathir's team registered a new party, UMNO Baru. Tengku Razali's faction, on the other hand, formed its own party, known as Semangat 46.
and they were willing to risk everything by coming out to form another party, a Malay-based party, to challenge the Barisan Nasional. Prior to that, the only closest challenge that I can think of was when in the early days of UMNO, a group of UMNO people left and they went on to form Party PAS.
The early 1990s also saw the rise of the Malaysian Islamic Party, or PAS, which was founded by Muslim clerics in UMNO. PAS then joined forces with Semangat 46 and two other Malay parties under the banner of Angkatan Perpaduan Ummah, or the Muslim Unity Movement. The new opposition coalition managed to capture the northern state of Kelantan in the 1990 election. Barisan Nasional attempted to wrest control of the state over the years, but failed.
When to reform Semangat 46, he lent support to the opposition. But the beginner is not Semangat 46, it is PAS. They benefited because a portion of UMNO people began to support the opposition at that time, and PAS gained a lot. But Semangat 46 itself did not do well at all. So in the end, of course, they decided that they should come back to UMNO.
The next biggest challenge facing UMNO and Barisan Nasional came in the midst of 1998 Asian financial crisis. Dr. Mahathir then sacked his deputy, Anwar Ibrahim, who he believed was going to challenge him for the presidency at the next party election. The next year, Mr. Anwar was found guilty of corruption and sodomy charges and was jailed for 6 years. The Reformasi movement to support Mr. Anwar led to the formation of the National Justice Party, or Keadilan. His party went on to form alliances with other opposition parties, including the Democratic Action Party, or DAP, and the Islamist Party, PAS, under the Barisan Alternative banner, and later on the Pakatan Harapan coalition.
So when Anwar Ibrahim came out to form an alternative party to challenge UMNO, the party he created was a multiracial party, unlike Kuli when he set up a Malay-based party to challenge UMNO. So you can't compare Anwar's experience with Kuli's experience. But the important thing to remember is that when Anwar came out, he was willing to try something new.
It provided at least a meaningful challenge. Before then, it was only token opposition. So it provided a more credible alternative, because you have a former Deputy Prime Minister who was once in government.
The opposition coalition managed to break Barisan Nasional's two-thirds parliamentary majority in the 2008 general elections. That happened during the premiership of Prime Minister Abdullah Badawi. BN also began to see its non-Malay component parties losing support in the peninsula.
In 2004, when Barisan Nasional did very well under Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, it came through after a 22-year-long rule by Dr. Mahathir. Because of the promise made by Abdullah Badawi that he was going to fix things, that he was going to address the problems of corruption and abuse of power. But ultimately, he failed to do so. Voters felt betrayed by what had happened, and that's why they threw out MCA, they threw out the baby along with the bathwater at that point in time.
BN's losses continued in the 2013 general elections under the leadership of Prime Minister Najib Razak. The coalition was again denied of its two-thirds parliamentary majority by the opposition. But everything came crashing down in the May 2018 general elections. The ruling coalition lost control of the parliament to Pakatan Harapan, ending its 61-year rule of the country. The fall of BN came during the height of the 1MDB scandal, which saw $4.5 billion being embezzled out of the country's sovereign wealth fund.
I think there were many factors that culminated in the largest corruption scandal in the world. only one NDB kept it all, represented everything that was wrong with party that was dominant in power for so long. And when you have this massive global financial scandal happening, it culminated in that expression of people power in the 2018 elections.
Politics is about perception, and I believe that one of the factors which contributed to the defeat of Barisan Nasional in May 2018 is partly because of the perception shaped and crafted by PH were very successful in convincing the people and in believing and perceiving that Barisan Nasional is, beyond repair, and they were clouded with corruptions and briberies, for example.
At the 14th general election, UMNO only captured 54 seats compared to 88 in the 2013 general elections, and with MCA and MIC almost completely obliterated. Can the once mighty BN recover its footing and march forward? It dominated Malaysian politics for 6 decades. But UMNO and Barisan Nasional's hold on power came to an abrupt end on May 9, 2018. Power changed hands from the Grand Old Coalition to an unlikely alliance known as Pakatan Harapan, led by former Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. Many observers attributed the fall to one factor: the 1MDB scandal.
If 1MDB had not happened, we'll probably see a Barisan Nasional government in Malaysia today. But it was obvious that Najib overplayed his hand. He thought that with the control of the media, control of the political system, he could overcome this. But what he forgot was that by 2018, the Malaysian landscape has changed. And what I meant by that is that social media had taken off, not only in the urban areas, but also in the rural areas. So there was no way to hide the corruption with 1MDB.
The 2018 general elections also saw the Malay electorate shifting its support from Barisan Nasional and UMNO to the opposition, driven largely by anger over Prime Minister Najib Razak's corruption scandal.
A lot of Malay voters, what we noticed from the voting record, moved their support from UMNO to the second strongest party in that particular state or in that area. So if we are talking about the Malay belt states, it's typically PAS that benefited from the shift away of Malay voters. In the central region, in the more urbanized parts of the country, the parties in Pakatan Harapan, particularly PKR, benefited in the shift away of Malay voters from Barisan Nasional.
Now, the Pakatan Harapan won because for the first time the Malays supported the opposition, although the opposition was made up largely of non-Malays. They supported because they did not like the BN because of the misdeeds or the crimes committed by Najib.
BN retained just 79 seats and lost nearly half of all the seats won in 2013. BN's component parties, MCA and MIC, also performed poorly, capturing a mere 3 seats between them at the 2018 polls. At its peak, during the 2004 general elections, MCA contributed to BN's overwhelming victory, winning 31 out of the 40 parliament seats which they contested.
Of course, they lost seats when they, not only because they were submissive and they were subservient to UMNO, but they did not dare to take a stand on the agenda of reform, on the issue of democracy and fighting corruption. So I think they were deservedly punished.
MCA has always been a business. I take care of you, you vote for me. And so politically, MCA has always been subservient to UMNO, It's okay to be subservient, but you can't not speak out for things that needs change. You cannot be so obliging and to whatever happened. So they opted for DAP. Of course, DAP has got its own problem. DAP is seen as too aggressive, too dominant, anti-Malay, that kind of thing. So somewhere along the way, you just have to find the right mix. But it just shows that people want change. And that's why Chinese have abandoned MCA.
The 2018 general elections also saw the fall of Johor to the opposition, Pakatan Harapan coalition. It was a big blow to the party, as Johor used to be a BN stronghold, being the birthplace of UMNO.
Honestly, I was shocked. It took me quite some time to move on and to recover from the sad moment back in 2018. Why we failed, why we lost, we basically underestimate the influence money. That's one. Second one, we also underplayed the influence of 1MDB issue. I must admit that. We thought that people, kampung folks, people from Felda, those who are from rural areas, don't understand what 1MDB is all about.
I think no one can deny the fact that it is Tun Mahathir's factor that actually made PH aspiration and vision to be in government happen and realized, because Tun Mahathir has that strength. If you can see during the campaign periods, of course the sentiment against Barisan Nasional is already there with all these issues when MDB and so on.
Mr. Najib's fall from grace also marked the start of his 1MDB trial. But he's not the only UMNO leader facing graft charges. Even his successor, Mr. Zahid, and several other senior UMNO leaders are facing corruption trials of their own.
I think UMNO has this leadership image problem. You know, in the wake of the 2018 general election, UMNO had its own party election just about a month after that, and Zahid Hamidi became the party president. And now we know that Zahid's embroiled in court cases, and which at some point will see a verdict coming out, and that may further affect adversely the image of UMNO.
But others, like former cabinet minister Zaid Ibrahim, feels that these so-called tainted leaders are still held in high regard by the community.
Just because they've got charges against them, or even if they're found guilty, it's not going to diminish their popularity. Not necessarily. I think it's too early to say who you can write off from UMNO's side, you know, when it comes to this issue of criminal charges. I mean, for example, Guan Eng has got charges too. But if you ask me whether his popularity diminished by that, I don't think that much.
But party activists like Mr. Noor Azlin wants to see reforms to be instituted from within the party to help ensure its long-term survival. And that would mean phasing out leaders who are seen to be a liability to the party.
It's a mockery to our reform agenda, or whatever new things that we are trying to offer to the whole Malaysia, if we are still doing the same and old thing, like keeping those leaders with baggage and liability.
I think for all the things, good things that Barisan Nasional has been offering for the 14th general election, the people tell us to ship out, regardless. I can't go on the basis that people don't have gratitude or not appreciative, but basically, to be very honest, maybe they're tired of it. They don't like certain allegations being made over and over again, and they've decided to vote us out.
My take is that it'll be very difficult for Barisan UMNO to win if Najib and Zahid are still in the leadership with UMNO. But as you know, right, Bersatu is hell-bent on destroying the career of Najib and Zahid, because if you are found guilty, especially if your fine is more than 2,000 ringgit or more than 6 months jail, you lose your political rights. This means that this group of leaders can no longer stand as election candidates.
With the mounting court cases and growing discontent within the party, will Mr. Zahid lead UMNO and BN down the same path as his predecessor Najib Razak? Can BN survive the corruption scandals and come back stronger at the next general election?
Calling all mummies, daddies and parents-to-be. Welcome to Singapore Parenting Festival, Singapore's largest virtual festival. Join our free webinars from 18th to 22nd May, which are specially designed to guide you wherever you are in your parenting journey. Take part in awesome contests and stand to win exciting prizes worth up to $500. What's more, enjoy exclusive discounts and deals in the grand sale. Proudly brought to you by MediaCorp and the Asian Parent. Scott's multivitamin gummies support your kids' growth. DoMax Do Grow comprehensive nutrients. The following partners. And Shopee, #1 online shopping platform in Singapore. Shopee.
Taiwan. I have witnessed how it has evolved into a beacon of democracy in Asia and a bastion of Chinese culture and tradition.
Victoria Jan, CNA, Taipei.
The ideas, aspirations and attitudes of Singaporeans are changing the nation that raised them.
Passionate Singaporeans living out their very ambitious dreams.
I'm looking to write a story of greatness, of extraordinary people impacting communities.
I guess a part of me wanted to connect even deeper with the people.
There's no point playing it safe. Safe will always be forgotten.
If we as Singaporeans are able to have a satellite that we can truly say was conceived, designed, engineered and built in Singapore, wow, how wonderful would it be?
This is Singapore, we don't give up.
CNA Leadership Summit. Presenting partner, Daikin.
The human cost of the climate crisis will become even greater.
A timely conversation on one of the biggest challenges facing the world today.
Climate change will affect every single person. A leadership summit is imperative.
In order to bring various leaders together to start thinking about sustainability.
Observing stringent safety measures, business leaders and decision makers gathered physically and virtually to discuss collective actions for a green recovery.
The message delivered was one of hope, that there are many solutions out there for climate change.
A big thank you to all the panelists and participants at this year's CNA Leadership Summit. Organised by MediaCorp. Official car partner, BMW. Official partner, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada.
From a leading political force in Malaysia, Barisan Nasional suddenly found itself in the opposition bench for the first time in history, following its humiliating defeat at the 14th Malaysian general election. But very quickly, it put plans in motion to shore up Malay support, working together with long-time rival PAS to weaken the position of the Pakatan Harapan government. It criticized every move by the Pakatan Harapan government, including the appointment of a non-Malay, Tommy Thomas, as the Attorney General. In December 2018, both UMNO and PAS also held a joint protest against the planned ratification of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, known as ICERD. They claimed that the move would take away Malay rights, weaken the position of Islam, and erode the power of the Malay rulers.
And I think over time, it cast PH as being lacking in Malay representation, lacking in its depth to represent Malay interests, and certainly not representative of the Malay agenda. And so it really put a lot of pressure on PH and created fissures within the PH coalition.
They were successful because they created this false paradox that we were trying to take away Muslim and Malay rights, which was not the case because we were just only complying with international commitments. And actually, this was not one of our fundamental election issues. This is just only pure politics.
In 2019, UMNO and the Islamist party PAS formed Barisan Nasional, or National Consensus. The pact is a political cooperation between the two largest Malay Muslim-based parties in Malaysia to ensure Muslim solidarity in facing the next general election. And that had helped to chip away Malay support for the Pakatan Harapan government even further. A year after GE14, a Merdeka Research Centre survey found that public support for the new administration declined significantly. Voters were dissatisfied with the economy and unfulfilled election promises. They're also concerned about the erosion of Malay rights and privileges. The infighting within the Pakatan Harapan government also presented an opportunity for UMNO to strengthen itself and recapture its lost ground. Pakatan Harapan's loss in its popularity became evident when it was defeated in 5 back-to-back by-elections in 2019, including Cameron Highlands, Semenyih, Rantau, Kinmanis, and Tanjung Piai. In the Tanjung Piai by-election, it lost to a candidate from MCA by a huge majority of more than 15,000 votes.
In all by-elections, although UMNO today is in the opposition, or Barisan Nasional, we won all the by-elections. We stood for election, but we put an MCA candidate standing on the banner of Barisan Nasional in Tanjung Piai. We won massively with a terrific majority. Don't you think so?
At that time, they were working very closely with PAS. So obviously, when UMNO and PAS get together, that's 2/3 of the Malay votes in the rural area. So that's why they were successful.
The Pakatan Harapan government eventually collapsed in February 2020, following the resignation of Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad on February 24th. That occurred after Mr. Muhyiddin defected with more than 30 MPs and formed an alliance with his old political nemesis, UMNO, as well as the opposition Islamist party, PAS. The political coup was dubbed the Sheraton Move, following a meeting held at Sheraton Hotel by Mr. Muhyiddin and members of the Bersatu, UMNO and PAS leaders. Mr. Muhyiddin emerged as the 8th Malaysian Prime Minister, leading a new government known as Barisan Nasional. BN also found itself returning to governance in the newly minted administration, playing second fiddle to its former rival, even though UMNO is the biggest party in the new coalition with 38 seats, compared to Bersatu's 31.
We are the biggest bloc in parliament. You can count the numbers. We are the biggest bloc, and we're the biggest party and the most senior party in the country, the oldest party. We are all over the country.
By right, we deserve to lead the party, the government, because we have more numbers of member of parliament. We have more numbers. Rightfully, we should lead. We should be the prime minister. If you are the what they call this key position in the government, should belong to us.
It didn't take long for cracks to appear in this uneasy alliance. Tensions reached its boiling point after a Bersatu leader, Haji G. Noor, was appointed as the new chief minister instead of UMNO's Bung Mokhtar following the Sabah polls in September 2020. The state election saw Pakatan Harapan's ally, Barisan, removed from power. In October 2020, UMNO threatened to pull its support from the Perikatan government unless it gets a bigger share of power.
They have tried very hard to replace Barisan Nasional. That's why the colour scheme of their their party is almost the same as Barisan Nasional. You have to go back to the history. The very fact that Bersatu was established is to mirror UMNO and to replace UMNO. And while we are in government, sometimes they didn't treat us as a partner in coalition. They still backstab us by having such a coalition, trying to replace. In the beginning, they tried to pinch our members.
But not all in UMNO are against working with Bersatu. While Mr. Muhyiddin's cabinet excluded the party's top leadership, several UMNO leaders were given ministerial posts, and this group prefers to remain in government.
Some of them are confused which party leaders they have to follow now. But all these are differences that should be handled in-house, should be handled internally rather than openly in media, because we're doing whatever that we are doing now that will create confusion among the grassroots. Memberikan yang terbaik kepada penduduk ataupun kepada rakyat khususnya.
In early January 2021, the UMNO grassroots made their voices heard. 189 out of 191 divisions rejected any form of cooperation with Bersatu for GE15.
Well, as a matter of fact, Bersatu was set up to replace UMNO. And I don't think we, UMNO, as a political party, can sit back and just relax with that. So that's why that alone explains why the sentiment on the ground really reject Bersatu, because the whole purpose of Bersatu establishment is to replace UMNO. And I think there should be only one political party that can be dominant in order to represent Muslim League. They cannot be more than one.
Only two divisions, one in Kelantan and another in Perlis, agreed to continue working with Bersatu. The chief of the UMNO division in Kelantan is Anwar Musa. He's also the Federal Territories Minister and is seen to be pro-Bersatu. A day later, Mr. Anwar was removed from his Secretary General posts in Barisan Nasional and Muafakat Nasional by UMNO President Mr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi.
Kita tidak akan masuk Perikatan Nasional sebagai parti. Bidang perwakilan keputusan itu adalah muktamad dan harus diletakkan noktah. Mari kita mengorak langkah ke hadapan. UMNO yang pernah terluka dalam PRU yang lalu, biar berlalu. Kita perlu bangkit semula. Bak harimau terluka, mahu menerkam semula. Kita balut luka lama. No DAP, no Anwar, no Bersatu.
During UMNO's annual General Assembly in March 2021, the party decided not to work with Bersatu in the next general election. But it will only contest under the Barisan Nasional banner. So, how will Barisan Nasional or UMNO fare going into GE15 alone? Can BN return to power?
No DAP, no Anwar, no Bersatu di dalam.
The message is loud and clear. UMNO has decided to end its alliance with Perikatan Nasional and will contest the 15th Malaysian general election on its own. During their annual general meeting, Party President Ahmad Zahid Hamidi announced that the party will remain with the Perikatan Nasional government until the emergency is lifted in August 2021. After which, they will sever ties with Bersatu and contest the election under their own Barisan Nasional banner. Those who are seen to have opposed the move or appeared to have sided with Bersatu were removed from their party positions. Among them is Anwar Musa. He was sacked as the Secretary General of Barisan Nasional for not towing the party line. The other is UMNO veteran and former Perlis Chief Minister Shahidan Qasim. He was removed as the Perlis Liaison Committee Chief.
UMNO thinks that it has got a strong grassroots base, so it is of course the most organized of all the parties, much more so than PAS or Bersatu. It's got a brand, it's been there for a long time. So I think for those reasons, it feels confident that it can actually go it alone in the next election or with some other partners.
At the end of the day, people want stability. And if you compare Barisan Nasional model, PH model, MPN model, and what can we offer to the people? And what model that can give such an assurance of stability? And we leave it to the people to judge with all the experiences that we have. As I mentioned, Barisan Nasional have the experience in terms of governing this country with the unique characteristics of embracing and celebrating the multiculturalism. With at the core of it is the Islam, Malay and Bumiputra.
UMNO sees the PN arrangement as something that squeezes them into a corner because they have to give up seats ahead of elections to PAS, to PPBM, and they have also realized that a lot of the PPBM MPs right now, incumbent MPs, were defectors from UMNO to begin with. And so for them, I think they have felt that the whole process was unfair because these guys contested under the UMNO banner and then they defected, and yet now UMNO has lost the real estate. So I think UMNO wants to take it back.
But a week after UMNO's AGM, an audio clip went viral of a purported conversation between Mr. Zahid and opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim, with the latter congratulating Mr. Zahid for his performance at the assembly. Both Mr. Zahid and Mr. Anwar denied the authenticity of the audio clip. But pressure has been building up for Mr. Zahid to step down and to hold party polls before GE15.
He's not in a very stable position, right? Given his cases, court cases, charges, corruption, and so on and so forth, it doesn't look good on him. So if anything, you could interpret it as a personal strategy of Zahid, but using UMNO, you see, to save his own skin. You could also read it that way. It is most unlikely that I think the other leaders within UMNO would accept that. Yeah? So I think the infighting, the factionalism will probably get worse as we get nearer to the election time.
I think, the situation in UMNO right now, after the AGM, shows a party that's somewhat factionalized between the groups that are in the ruling coalition, inside the cabinet, and those that are outside. And I think the party president is also aware that, he has a court case going, that he is, perhaps not the best guy to front the party in a future election.
UMNO Youth Chief Dr. Ashraf Wajidi Dusuki, however, dispels the notion that the UMNO leadership is in disarray because of the so-called factional discord within the leadership. He points out that UMNO as a party has had its ups and downs through the decades, and this latest case is no exception.
At the end of the day, we may have differences. That is common. But what I can say at this particular point in time, I couldn't see that differences among the leadership as as bad as before, because you can see that you may have differences, but it doesn't to the extent disorganize you or disunite the whole parties into fraction that may bring collapse of the party.
At the grassroots level, there are growing concerns over the party's inability to put forward a prime ministerial candidate to lead the party and the coalition at the next general election. So far, there are no leaders strong enough or have the necessary charisma to lead the charge. Many of the seasoned ones are now part of the so-called court cluster, or those who are now facing corruption charges.
Well, I think if they remove all those so-called court cluster people, the people who are being charged for crimes, if they remove them, then UMNO might be able to regain some support from its former members, but it will never be as strong as it used to be. Because they are split up. There is no proper leadership now. The leaders are against each other. So if you choose one leader to become the head of UMNO, the others will not support. Like Anwar Musa, for example, you don't expect him to support Zahid if Zahid becomes the head of UMNO.
It's very difficult to name one simply because I think there's a leadership deficit within the party itself. Nobody wants to kind of say, oh, the president of UMNO will automatically become the Prime Minister designate as it used to be. So we are in very different times.
The reality is, it will be hard for UMNO to go it alone and still win big at the election to form the next government. It has to rely on its continued cooperation with Islamist party PAS to make that dream possible. But shortly after UMNO's annual general meeting this year, its partner in the Muafakat Nasional Pact, PAS, issued a joint statement with Bersatu. Both parties have pledged to strengthen their cooperation in facing the next general election.
Maybe PAS thinks that there's more advantage with Bersatu because Bersatu doesn't really have such a wide base, you see, as UMNO. So I feel that there's a higher chance of PAS getting to contest more seats.
One thing PAS has to remember that they are become so relevant as of today because of their collaboration with UMNO through Muafakat Nasional. If they are still working alone, I don't think they are relevant and manage to capture PBBM's attention and for PBBMs to wow them to work together.
So I'm one of the few people going around telling all my friends that you should never take what PAS says seriously. If you talk about flip-flop, PAS will win the Oscar Award for Malaysia. So PAS basically just wants to be in government to implement its Islamic policies. So in the next election, if UMNO wins, I can guarantee you PAS will quite happily jump out of Perikatan to join UMNO again.
UMNO and Barisan were once a powerful political bloc. They continued to win every election with the backing of the electorate across all races, despite clinging on to ethnic-based policies as the main philosophy of administration for decades. But ethnic-based politics and massive corruption finally led to its downfall on May 9th, 2018, as non-Malays and many Malay urban voters began to pull back their support for the party. Today, what is clear is that the era of a single dominant party is over, and no single coalition can easily win in the next election and form the next government.
Yeah, in fact, nobody will benefit with all this split. As Kit Siang says, no one has a majority to form a government. No one can become a prime minister because all are leaders of small parties. I foresee that the government of the future in Malaysia would be weak because there is no party that can command more than 50% of the electorate.
Hard to say whether BN can win back government in the previous configuration. We will definitely see PPBM or Bersatu contesting and possibly in partnership with PAS, so that's going to soak up a sizable amount of the Malay electorate. We don't know for certain. So that's going to take away some Malay support from Barisan Nasional. We also know that PH is there. PH may not fare so well on the Malay front, but it does have its core Malay vote, in urban areas, in suburban areas. And there are some parts of the country that still have residual support for politicians aligned to Dr. Mahathir. So in such a crowded political arena, it's hard to imagine any single coalition winning it easily.